Okay, so welcome to this session on Blackboard Collaborate Basics. I'm just going to go through the basics of how to access sessions, set them up, make sure your students can access them and use the tools within the sessions as well. Built into that will be some tips based on just knowledge that I've picked up from doing it myself really, and some tips for how to control your class and your students when you're in there. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do first of all is share my screen with you, and hopefully when I do that, that's not the right one, excuse me, always happens, this one is what I want. So hopefully you can all see this, you know where the talk button is, so if you can't see it, give me a shout. And if you want me to stop at any point, what you'll need to do is above the list of names where it shows everyone in the room, you'll see a button with a hand. While I'm showing you this bit, I won't be able to look at you guys on my screen, so if you want me to stop, just click the hand button and that will let me know. So I'll get rid of that just now. So when you come into Blackboard Collaborate, this is what you will see. And the two main sections, Blackboard itself, the two main sections are this one here, which I can grab and move about. This one's for your announcements. If you are involved in any courses or units where someone has made an announcement, and that someone will be an instructor, so it will be a lecturer or a course leader, then that will be up here. And over here on the right hand side, this section here, which you'll notice you can grab and move about if you don't like it there. This contains a list of all your courses. So it's all the units or courses that you have been added into in the various roles that are available. It starts with, as you'll see at the top written in grey here, courses where you are an instructor. So you don't get added as a lecturer to these things. It's a different word, it's instructor, and it will show you all the courses or units where you have been added as that. If you are going to be delivering any teaching through Collaborate, you'll need to make sure that your course leader has added you as an instructor to those units, because you can't do anything until that's occurred. So you'll need to contact your course leader, or if you are the course leader and you don't know, you'll need to contact perhaps your curriculum manager, who'll be able to sort that for you. So you should see a list there of anything you can teach on. I've got loads, apologies for that. If I scroll down a wee bit, we'll come to a section near the bottom for me, which is courses where you are a student. Now you would have had some to go there today to find the course that you're on just now. There are other roles you can take though. There are teaching assistant roles, so people can be added in various roles and they have various rights over those courses when they're added in. But what should show at the top, and then alphabetically by the name, not the code, but the name, are the courses and units where you're an instructor. So the first thing is to find the one that you want. I'm going to use just the main room I have for my Business Skills for Tourism course to display this bit here. You click on it once just to go in and see that. Now, what you will see when you come in here will be different depending on each unit. If it's your unit and you're the first person to have ever used it, it will be quite sparse and bare here. There won't be announcements. And this menu here on the left, which is in yellow, won't have very many things in it. Some of these things I've added in myself here. What you will need to do is check if there is a link for getting to Blackboard Collaborate Sessions. Now, it won't always be called what this one here is called, Collaborate Sessions. That one's called that because that's what I named it when I put it there. It's not a tool that's there straight away on the toolbar. So what I'll do is I'll just show you just now how to add it in if it's not there. Again, everything I'm showing you here is in the guide that I'm going to hand out to you all at the end. Or if you're watching this recording, get in touch and ask me to send it to you if you don't have it. So if it's not there, you go up to this plus in the top left-hand side. And what you want is a tool. So it's a link to one of the tools within Blackboard. That will open up this wee box here. And what you put in the top bit is whatever you want to call that link. So what do you want it to say in the menu when people click on it? So you might type in Collaborate Sessions or something like that so it's obvious. Then this drop-down menu here links, it shows you all the tools you can link to. the one you want for Blackboard Collaborate is this one here, Blackboard Collaborate Scheduling Manager. So you choose that one, you give it a name. It's important that you put a tick in here. You need to make it available to users. What you can do is add lots of links in here and keep them hidden until you're ready for everyone to use them. But this one you'll probably want to be live straight away. So put a tick in there and you can press submit if you'd filled in all those boxes, and it would drop the link in here. Now if for any reason you forgot to put the tick in the box for making it available to users, I have put in the guide how to fix that if it's dropped in without it, so don't worry about that. So what you do then is click on that to come to the section that you want, and when you get there you will find it looks much like this. What will happen is you will have a classroom that is named after the unit or course that you've clicked into. You'll also have a classroom available for every lecturer that has been added as an instructor to the unit. So you'll probably find that some things, for example, the guidance unit is on here, and that's something that's taught on every FE course. So there are tons of classrooms for all different instructors when you get in here. It used to be a bit more complicated than this. If you ever did the training before with Murdo, Macmillan, or in any other way, you probably had to schedule your sessions, and you would have had to use tools to set up scheduled sessions. It's added these tools in now, so you don't ever need to schedule a session. You can just direct people to a room and they can launch it whenever they get there. So just a couple of things to mention before you decide which room you're going to direct your students to. If you choose to use the room that is named after the unit, that room is only available in this unit. So that is a classroom that is located here and here alone. If you choose to use the room that is named after yourself, that is your room, and you have one room for the whole of Blackboard Collaborate. So if you, you go into another unit and see your room there, that's actually the same room as this one here. And I made the mistake a few weeks ago of having to keep an eye on a group that were studying while I was teaching another group, and I told them both just to launch my classroom in different units. But of course the second group ended up jumping in with the first group, and that just got very confusing. So there shouldn't be any situations, I don't suppose, where you need two rooms open, but just be aware that this is one classroom, your room, and that you can't have two groups coming in even on different units. So you'll click to launch whichever room you want, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen now and come back to Blackboard to show you the next bit. So I'm going to skip to another page, and what you're going to see on the right hand side, where this nice blue section is, you're going to see a picture of Blackboard Collaborate, this classroom that we're in just now. So don't be alarmed if you're seeing something within itself here. This here, let me just grab it for you. This is a picture. I'm moving it around now so you know what I'm directing you to. So what I'm going to do now is, obviously you've got instructions for accessing a classroom, getting in. I'm going to show you now what the tools do and where to find them and how all of that sort of thing works once you get into the classroom. So obviously you can see where the list of names show, and all of you have used the audio setup, which is up at the top. Now, as I said on the screen earlier, it is very important that everybody does that every time they come in. It's the sort of thing that gets a bit tired and students don't do it. And then what happens is they stop you in the middle of a session and tell you they can't hear you, or they try to talk to you and you can't hear them. And it's usually caused by them not having done the audio setup. So probably their microphone volume's right down, so even if they're talking we can't hear them, or their headset volume's right down and they don't know it until you start talking. So to prevent unnecessary issues, it's quite good to let them know from the start that they will have to do that every time they come in. And what's good is that you can actually see when they're doing it. So the symbol that you click on to do the audio setup, it shows beside people's names when they're doing it. So I usually leave my students a couple of days, and then when I see people aren't doing it, I let them know. I can see them. So I'm going to draw some lines around the place so that, no I'm not, I'm going to use this a wee pointer. Let me just grab it. Hang on a second. So I'm going to drop an arrow about the place, and that's what I'm going to be, wherever it drops, that's what I'm going to be talking about next. Okay, so we've obviously talked about this, the audio setup button. I'll just keep going down on the left-hand side now and talk you through the buttons and what they do. So the next one that you might need to be worrying about is the talk button. Both of you who are in the room have used that today. You need to click that whenever you want to talk and click it off when you're finished talking. So it can be important to do that. One of the reasons is that some rooms are defaulted to only allow 3 microphones at once. And if people aren't switching their microphones on, then nobody else can use theirs. If you find that your talk button is greyed out, you can't use it for any reason, that probably means that 3 other people have got their microphones on. And if that's the case, at that point you have lost control of the class because you can't speak anymore. I'll show you in a second how you can combat that, but if you get people in the habit from the start of switching their microphones off, it's good as well because it eliminates background noise when other people are talking. This button here activates video, but I do not use video in Blackboard Collaborate because if you're using video, it significantly increases your bandwidth usage, and that can be a problem in some of our centres where bandwidth is low. So Blackboard can be a much lower bandwidth teaching method than video conferencing, but as soon as you put the video on, it can cause issues. I have actually had students who've clicked on video by accident, it's launched it up and the classroom has crashed because there's not enough connectivity to support it. So it's a good idea not to use that. There's 2 dials above these 2 buttons, and one of them is your microphone control and the other one is your audio, what you're hearing, your volume control for that. It can be that these can move, they can go up or down in the middle of a session without you realising. I think it self-adjusts based on what it's hearing itself. But if your students can't hear you, just have a look and check that that hasn't fallen down anywhere or it doesn't need cranked up a wee bit. You might want to do the audio setup again just to push things through. And if you can't hear anything, check that your audio is, your volume is set to go up and down well. Okay, so the next bit is this section down here. I'll show you some of these buttons here and some ways that you can control everybody as a group or people individually. So this first button here is the emotion button. You can go and hover over that just now and you'll see what's in there. There's different options and these can be very useful if you're doing a teaching session. You can ask everyone to go and choose an emotion for how they feel about what you've just done. And this confusion button can be used quite regularly if you're anything like me. But go and have a look at them now and you'll notice that when you choose one, it sits underneath you for a minute or 2. You can go up and change it anytime you want, and you can take it off altogether. I think generally they disappear after about 10 seconds, I think, so they're quite a quick method of gauging everybody's interest or excitement levels. I'm glad you're applauding, Val, thanks for that. Okay, the next one along is the stepping away button. So that one is something to click. If I click it now, you'll see that it shows me as being away under my name. So if you need to step away from the session for any reason, you can click that. I quite often will set a task for my students and give them a time to do it in, and I'll let them know that I'll be in the classroom, but obviously I'm not going to sit staring at the screen the whole time. I might have to run to the printer or something. So I'll click that if I'm away for a significant period of time. You know, maybe I just need to nip to the loo or get a cup of tea, who knows, but that's what you can click to let people know. It might be that a student has an urgent need to leave the room and they just want to let you know without causing a fuss, so they can put that up. Sometimes they just run to the toilet and some of them will put that up. It can be useful just to know that you're missing somebody. The next one is the button to raise your hand. Thank you, Sue. And this one is a really good tool because when I was sharing my screen with you, if you leave the panel up that shows all your students, this panel here on the left-hand side, if you leave that on the screen, it has a big black box on the screen for your students covering whatever part of the document you're trying to share that it's sitting on. So you can get rid of them, but you can just minimize the screen and focus solely on the document. And this raising hand button, it also, as well as showing your hand raised, it pings in the lecturer's ear. Whoever the instructors or moderators are, a ping will happen in their ear to let you know that someone has raised their hand. So I don't need to be looking at the box to know that somebody wants me to stop. So it's a good tool for that. It's also a good tool for if people want to interrupt with questions, because they raise their hand first. They're not just interrupting you with their microphone. So it's quite good etiquette for that. It's also good, like I said before, if you've got students who are working on something for half an hour or so, you don't want to be sitting staring at the screen. You can leave this open while you're doing some other work, so you can, check your emails, do whatever you need to do, and when you hear the ping, you know someone's there waiting for you to assist with something. The last one here now gives you some yes or no options. It's a poll button. There are some more advanced settings where you can add some extra options in here, but at the moment it's just yes or no. I use that a lot. So before I start any session, I say, can you just let me know if you can all hear me? They all put up the green tick. I carry on. If I ask a question, everybody okay? Anybody got any issues with that? They all put the green tick up. I know I can carry on. If you guys would like to click in there and put a tick up just now, or next, depending on what you feel like. What happens on my screen is just below these 4 buttons here, it's showing me the number of ticks and the number of crosses that are appearing. And I've also got a button just over here that says clear. So if I push that now, it takes away all your ticks and crosses, and I can continue with the session. So I can do that in one go. I can see how many people are happy, how many people are not, or how many people are voting one way or another, and I can clear them all at the same time. Okay, I'm going to come down to the main room now, and these buttons along here. Your name, if you're the instructor, should be along the top of the screen, and these buttons here, you may not see just now because you're enrolled as students in here. You will have them if you're an instructor, and they set the permissions for the students in the room. So this first one is a wee microphone button, and that lets you activate everybody's microphones. So like I was saying earlier, if you are trying to talk and your talk button's grayed out because everybody else has got their microphones on, you can come down here and click that, and you've removed permission for them to use the microphones, for them to use audio, so you can take control again of the session. That's how that one works. The next one along is the video button. So I tend not to have that activated. Some rooms you come into, some of these things will be activated depending on what the settings are for that unit or for you. Sometimes they'll all be deactivated and you'll have to go and choose the ones that you want to activate. So I always make sure video is deactivated so that even if somebody clicks on that button accidentally, it won't, crash the session. The next one along is the chat facility. So you've got a chat box down here, which we'll come to in a minute. You can enable that or disable it. For some sessions, it can be helpful to have it disabled. You can always see if anyone is typing in the chat box, which can be helpful, because what you can also do is start private chats with other people. If you go beside their name, if you move your mouse beside their name, you should see a little list of like 5 lines, I think, with a wee arrow beside it, a button like that. And if you click on there, you can choose to send a private message. And so students can send private messages to each other. So you wouldn't see the messages, but you can see beside their name, it will flash up a little button that looks like that to show that they're typing something. So if you can see a student's typing quite a lot and you're not getting any messages yourself, or in the main chat room down here, you know that students are chatting to each other, and you can just shut that off if you want, or you can draw attention to it if you choose to also. We can look at that in a wee second if you want to. The next button along, that's for the whiteboard. So this whole section here is your whiteboard, and there are a few tools. This toolbar here, I'm going to talk you through in a minute. Those are the tools for the whiteboard. So you can activate them using this button, or you can deactivate them. If there's a chance that your students will get into the classroom before you, you might find that your whiteboard has been completely graffitied before you even get into the room, if that is enabled. So you might want to have all these things shut off, and you can enable them if you need them. The next two This one allows your students to share applications with you. So like I shared my screen with you earlier, you might want them to be able to share their screens. To be honest, I don't use that. I think it's just a bit too technical for most students. Not that I'm putting them down, but a lot of them, you know, they prefer just to keep it simple. So what I do is I just get them to email me anything that I need to see during the session if it's relevant, or I'll just get them to save it, and you know, if we're in the same room together another time, I'll look at it then. And the last one in this list is web tour permission. I've never yet found a use for that. I'm not entirely certain how useful it is, so I always keep that one off. There's a chance I'll be running more advanced Blackboard sessions in the future, and that's something I'll cover in that. But for the basics, I don't think that's necessary. So next, you'll come to the main room. You can see everybody that's in here, and it might be, if you're anything like me, you might want to see everybody in the order that they have arrived. I'm just a bit funny like that. You can see the order they've arrived in the chat box. It will tell you who's joined the main room as an instructor. But what you can also do is set your room up in the background to have everyone's hands raised when they come in. So they wouldn't have to click this button. You might have noticed when you came in here, your hand was already raised. And when the hands are raised, it puts a number beside them. So you can see which order the hands were raised in. And that lets you know who came in the room first, but it also lets you know if people were wanting to ask questions, what order that was in. So that can be quite a useful thing to set up, and you can edit that in the, if you go back to the page where your classroom was, you can edit the room before you launch it and set some of these settings up in there. So clicking beside each person, or just hovering your mouse beside each person's name, as a lecturer, you can actually use these permission buttons for individuals. So if there's an individual who you want to keep in the classroom, but they're being particularly annoying over chat, you can just disable their chat permission. So you can do it per person beside each person's name, or these ones at the top will do it for the whole room, for everybody that's in the room. So that's a decision you can make. Then there's the chat box down here. You type your chat in there and press enter, and it shows here in the main room. So there's a room tab here. If there's more than one instructor in the room, or maybe you've got an instructor and a teaching assistant, maybe you've got learning support in the room, they would probably be in the category of moderators. So you could have a private chat with them using that tab there. So I could click there, and I would only be able to talk to anyone else in the room who was a moderator. So it might mean that you can say, alert learning support to the fact that a student is not picking something up that well. But quite often that won't be the case. If any student wants to chat with you privately, these chat tabs will appear here. There's only room for one more here. So what you need to do is deal with that one, close it. There'll be a little X button here, and that will allow you to see the other one. Because otherwise you can't really see them all. So generally speaking, unless it's private, I would be asking everyone to chat in the room. You can post a chat just now if you like. Let me know how you're finding the session so far. There's a wee emoticon button there that will let you choose a smiley face or some other picture to add in there as well if you want. So feel free to drop me a wee chat at the moment. Val sent me a private chat. I can see from my screen that Sue is typing, so I'll close Val's just in case Sue wants to send it to me privately, otherwise I wouldn't be able to see hers. I would know there was somebody else there, but I wouldn't be able to see what it was. Something to be aware of when using the chat box, I'll just say this while Sue's typing, is if you start typing a message, or one of your students does, if they stop halfway through or just leave their cursor flashing in the box, it will stay on my screen showing that up beside their name, showing that they're still typing. And that can make me kind of hesitate, so I'll be keeping an eye on that, waiting for that message to come up in the chat box. So if it's been like that for a wee while and you don't think there's a conversation going on, you might want to alert that person to the fact that they've left their cursor in there. Now, I stopped talking there because I could see on my screen that there was a delay in the audio, and I'll talk to you about this now that it's occurred. So beside your names here, another icon comes up. It looks like the microphone there, but it has colours beside it. If it has amber, that suggests there's a slight delay. If it shows red beside it, that's quite a strong delay. Sometimes it can be that the audio has stopped. Your students aren't hearing what you're saying, basically. What Blackboard does, which is really quite annoying sometimes, is if it senses an audio delay, it will slow down what you are saying when it sends it to the students. And then when it's ready to pick up again, it will speed it up again to catch up with where you are now. So it tries to prevent breaks in the audio by doing that. But what it means is that you end up sounding a bit like Frank Bruno for a second or two, and then you sound like Minnie Mouse when it catches up. Sounds like you're on helium. So you may have just experienced that, people in the room. If you did, then you'll know exactly what your students are going to hear from you. It'll probably happen again during the session. If you didn't, at least you're aware of it now and you can warn your students. Val's telling me I sounded like Minnie Mouse. Sue, your hand's up. Does that mean you want to ask a question?
Yes, I can't put anything on in the little room. I've typed something, but there's nothing to click.
No, you just press enter on the keyboard and it sends it up.
Oh.
There we go. Enjoying it so far. Thank you very much. Yeah, so it's just type and enter, and that sends the message up. I should have mentioned that, though. You don't think of the simple things sometimes. But, you know, anything you're finding now is something you can bear in mind when you're introducing your students to it. Okay, so I'll crack on with some of these things then. So I think we've covered chat. What you can do is you can detach some of these boxes. If you click here, you can minimize your chat, and that lets you see more of the main room and the people that are in it. So you can see more, you know, if you've got more than 8 people in here, they're going to start falling off the bottom, and you'll get a scroll bar here, which you need to use to see everybody. So you can click here to minimize the chat, as long as you check it regularly. You can also, there's an option in here that will let you detach the whole chat panel, but I've never found a need for that yet. Sue, you've left your microphone on, which isn't a big deal because there's not many of us in the room, but it just means if you say anything derogatory, I'm going to hear it. Okay, so I'll move on now to the whiteboard tools, which is this toolbar here. You should see that now because I have given you whiteboard tools. And what I'll do is I'll talk some of them through and I'll let you use them if you want towards the end, so you can have a wee play about with them. The first thing to tell you is that this toolbar has got some wee dots at the top, and if you grab it there, you can move it around. It might not always be in the place you want it to see, so you can see what's going on. Oh, now you're moving my whole room around. Yeah, you can move your toolbar around. It might not always be in the place you want it. Unfortunately, what I want to do with it is have it come along the bottom here horizontally, and I haven't yet found out how to do that, but I'm sure there must be a way, because all you can do is move it across vertically at the moment. So I'll just talk you through these tools and what each one of them does to start with. So this top one here is your tool for selecting objects. So if you're clicked into that one, you can grab objects and move them around. So if I click into that one now, my arrow disappears because I'm not clicked into that, but I'll talk you through that in a minute. But I can now grab this picture and move it around if I need to. If there's any text on here that's been typed, well, anything that's been put on the whiteboard, basically, I can grab it and move it around. By giving you access to your whiteboard tools, though, your students can also grab these things and move them around. So if you want them to do stuff on the whiteboard, depending on the bunch you've got, you might want to only give them their whiteboard tools at the time that you want them to use them. But that's what that one does. Any text that's been added, either typed or written, which I'll come to in a minute, you can grab all of that as well and move it around. This next button here, this is what I'm using just now. So that arrow I've dropped comes from this wee menu here. That's your pointer tool. And in there, if you click on the corner arrow, it should give you different options for what you want your pointer to look like. Mine defaults to the sun. I don't know why. It's not a very useful pointer, and it's one I tend not to want, so I always have to change it back to an arrow, and it's one of these things I always think I need to find out how to default it to the arrow, but I haven't yet. Something to be aware of, though, is when you click, it will drop your pointer, but the next place you click will take that last pointer away and put a new one down. And if you click off the screen somewhere, into the chat box for example, you can still chat, that's fine. Your pointer stays where it is, but as soon as you come back onto the whiteboard, your pointer is back with you, and the next place that you click will do that. It will put your pointer there. So you can choose different pointers. There's arrows, there's thumbs up, there's various things. The arrow is the most useful one, I find. The next one down is the freehand pen tool. So that one is used for writing freehand. It can be useful for things like drawing around something. Oh, there's something appearing right now. So you can draw around things. If I want to highlight something somebody said, I can draw around it. It's not very good for writing with freehand because it's difficult to use, it takes forever, and it takes up a lot of the screen if you want your students to be using that to feedback with. So what I tend to do is get them to type things rather than writing them, and we just use that for highlighting anything. So the next tool down is the typing tool. That allows you to put basically a text box on the screen. If you click it, you'll find you get a cross with the button beside it. If you click and drag, it will draw a text box on the screen, which you can then type into. What it will also do is open up a toolbar, which gives you options to change the color, change the font size, and add things like bold and stuff like that. Once you've typed in there, it can be a wee bit fiddly. You can use the selection tool to grab it and move it around. So I find quite often I'll ask my students to feedback on something like that, and they'll all tend to drop their boxes on top of each other. So I wait for them to finish typing, and I just tell them not to move them around. I'll move them all around myself, so I can move things. So whoever wrote the V's, probably Val, I can move that around as well, depending on where I want it to go. So these things can be moved around. The only thing I would suggest to be aware of for this is once you've typed in there, to get back into it, get the pointer tool and double click. If you go back to the text box tool, that will just draw another text box instead of letting you back into the original one. So double click to go back in there. You can highlight your text then and change it, make it bold, make it green, make it size 36 if you want. What I would suggest you do is click to add your text box, and before you type anything, set up the color, size and font and everything that you want. Then all your typing will come out like that, because as I say, it can be a bit tricky to grab hold of it again afterwards, though not impossible. The next one then puts a filled rectangle on the page. You would draw that out. So I'm just going to go back a page for a second, and you'll see that this page has got a bluish background. I can grab that and move it around. It's got a blue background. That is just a filled rectangle that I put on the screen. The reason I've done that is because certain learning difficulties mean that the students might have issues with reading black on white. So when I first started teaching through Collaborate, that was brought to my attention, and I just put a background in straight away at the start of every session. And I just do it now as a matter of default, because you never know when people, they may not have a diagnosed learning need, but it might be that, you know, black on white can be quite harsh, and if you're going to be using it for a wee while, it's just softer sometimes to do that. So I'll come back across here. So you would click on that. It will bring up another box, usually around here-ish, which will give you colour options. You can choose a different colour, then draw out your box, and that will be a background colour for you. The next one down draws an unfilled rectangle. I've never yet found a need for that. I can't imagine what you might need it for if it's unfilled, because you've already got a whiteboard, you can put text in, you've got the the freehand tool that you can draw around with, so I'm not quite sure what the best use of that would be, but I tend not to use it. What you could do, I suppose, is maybe you've got a question that you want to write up at the top of the screen, and you might want to write answers out at the bottom of the screen, but not display them straight away. So you might want to write your answers and draw a rectangle across the top of them, which you could then move later on using your select tool to reveal the answer. That could be a reason, but I haven't yet used that myself. The next one here, this is a line tool. It can be quite useful for just drawing lines to things. So let's have a look at this thing here. You could draw a line, you can change the color, you can change the thickness. Let's highlight the fact that there's some artwork going on here. So you can use that for anything you think you might want to. The next one down allows you to take a screen print and add the screen print to the whiteboard. So this that we're looking at on the whiteboard, this picture of Blackboard Collaborate, that is a screen print which I took and pasted in there. So you can do that. You know, if you don't want to share a document, you might just want to take a screen print of it and share it in the whiteboard instead. And the last one here allows you to insert some clip art. So that can be used depending on what you might need it for. I'll just show you a couple more tools that are in here before we move on to anything else. So up here, this button here shows you that you're looking at your whiteboard at the moment. You're on your whiteboard. The next one along is the button for you to share your screen. Oh, Val's got a question. Yep, Val?
Sue's screen's disappeared. Can you hear me, Sarah?
Her screen has disappeared.
Oh.
Yeah, I can, yeah. Her screen's disappeared.
I think she was playing it too much. The whole thing's
yeah, let's
gone.
look at the,
yeah.
Can she still hear me? She's still in the room, so she must still be able to hear me. So if she looks at the bottom of her screen, she'd probably see a square with a purple circle with white arrows in it. If she clicks that, it should come back up, I would hope.
She likes to play with the buttons. Are you back on? I know what you've done. Just take that off totally. Yeah, you can. That's it. Click it off.
Thank you, Val. Okay, I will carry on. Hopefully you can still see. So what I was going through there was these buttons up at the top. So this one here shows you that you're using the whiteboard. And this one here lets you share applications. So if you want to share a Word document or an Excel document or a web page or anything at all, you can click there, like I did earlier when I took you out of here into the Blackboard homepage, and that will list any applications that you have got open. That's something that you need to bear in mind. What you need to do when you share an application is make sure you've got the thing open already before you share it that you want to share. So if it's Word documents or anything like that, I tend to have them open before I start the session. And what you need to make sure you have done is that you haven't minimized that. So when you were opening your Word document, obviously you need to come back into Blackboard to start your session, but what you need to make sure is you haven't minimized that document because it will not show in this menu if you have. So what you would do is open your Word document and then just click down here maybe to go back to Blackboard. So you're leaving it fully open, you're just looking at a different piece of software. So that button up there will give you a list of all the applications you can share, and you just choose the correct one. Over here, you can load content. So if you've got, some units in Blackboard have a lot of materials uploaded into them, and you can load content from the unit that you're teaching in by clicking in that button. I'm not an expert on that because, to be honest, most of my units are not on there in that way. I use Blackboard Collaborate much more than I use Blackboard itself. But if that's a subject of interest to anyone, then we can maybe cover that in the more advanced session that we might be doing. The next button along is quite important. That's the record button. So that lets you record the session. Our session's recording at the moment, obviously. So I click there. It will bring up a little warning saying, are you sure you want to start the session now? You will say yes. Then it will play that message into hopefully everybody's ears to say that the recording has started. What you can do though is it is quite clever. It lets you click there again. This button will change to actually say recording. It'll become blue. It will say recording and it will have a little red circle beside it. And if you, for example, do a bit of teaching, send your students off to do some work for half an hour, and then you want them to come back afterwards for more teaching, you can click the record button again and it will pause the recording. So you don't need to record that 30 minutes when they're off doing a task. As long as you remember to click it again afterwards, before you start your next bit of teaching, then that whole gap will have been taken out. What I tend to do is when I'm giving students instructions to do tasks, I'll tell them what I want them to do, I'll send them off, but I'll also write it up on the whiteboard as well. And I'll leave the recording running for a few seconds so that anyone who has missed the session can see the written tasks as well on the board. Because I like to give all my instructions verbally and written just to make sure everybody's got the best method of taking them down. Here are some arrow buttons. So like I showed you a second ago, we're now looking at a whiteboard that's got a picture of Blackboard Collaborate, but if I click this arrow here, it takes me back to the first page that I created, which is all the information about just logging in and stuff. So I can click the other arrow, this one here, to come back. So it lets you come back and forward pages. There's a new page button here, which lets you start a new page, obviously. And if you're finished with a page, you might end up with quite a few, so you might just, this one's become a wee bit scrolly, so you might just want to delete the page when you're finished with it. Up to you how you use those things. So there's only a couple of other things I want to talk to you about before the end of the session. The first one is something that you'll find in tools. Now, you can't get this until you're an instructor, so I have listed it carefully in the guide that I'll make for you. But in the tools, there are loads and loads of different options for various things that you can do. You can set up breakout rooms, so you might want people to split up into groups but stay on Blackboard Collaborate and have discussions privately. You can set that up in here. You can do all sorts of things. You can set up polls, so that's where you can add more things into the poll options here other than yes or no. But the most useful thing that I've shown you in the guide is the timer. So there is a timer option in there, and whenever you are setting them a task, or even if you just want them to go away and think about something for a few minutes, or go away and discuss in their various rooms something for a few minutes, set a timer. I'll set one just now and you'll see it. I'll just set it for 1 minute at the moment. When you set one up, there's options to display a message or play a sound when the timer has expired. I always let it do both, which means you don't need to be in the Blackboard Collaborate room to know when the timer's up. So I'll set one for 1 minute, and you guys, when you look up here, should now see a timer that's counting down. And when it comes to the end, it will make a ping, and it should display a message somewhere down here on your screen to say that the Blackboard Collaborate timer has ended. So it does mean you can send students off to do work. They don't even need to keep their headsets on really if they don't want to, because you've set a timer and a message will come up on the screen. So as long as they're looking out for that or keeping a rough eye on the time, they should know. But it will play a ping in your ear as well, so you don't need to be sitting here looking at the room as well. So that can be a really useful thing. Okay, so that's me gone through all the tools. In a second that timer will go off, so I'll use this as a moment just to see if anybody's got any questions. In a second I'm going to give you some extra useful information, but if you've got any questions at the moment, let me know. No questions. The timer has timed out though, so hopefully you heard that ping, and you can also see this message. It stays on the screen for a wee while. You can dismiss it if you want, and it's got a wee timer showing how long it's going to stay for. It's quite good that it stays for that length of time, because you might not be staring at your screen the whole time, and it does make everybody get the chance to actually see what's going on. So the only other thing I want to discuss is just a couple of tips really for things that have occurred, or things that I found have been particularly useful. If you haven't used this before and you're going to be using it for teaching, have some practice first. So go in, you might want to get a colleague to come in and just sit in your session, or just sit while you do a couple of things, just so you know how it's going to look from the other side. I had a unit where somebody else in the college was also in there as a student for whatever reason, or an instructor, you can change them to a student and you could ask them to log in, even if they're not actually doing it. It lets you see on their screen what they're seeing, if you know what I mean. So it can be helpful to get someone else just to log in, even if they're doing other work, and just so you can see it on two screens. So you can run your session in advance and check that everything works as you expect and the students can see what you expect. So I would advise you to do that. Always be aware that there can be delays in the students seeing and hearing what you do. So as I said before, in this list here, when the students are there, it will show you if there are audio delays. There can be whiteboard delays as well, so the pen there will show beside people with the red or amber dots beside it to show that there's a delay in that. So if you see that, just pause in what you're doing and they should catch up. If I see an audio delay, I tend to switch my microphone off, and that seems to let everything reset. If I keep my audio on, it's still trying to catch up and it can take a bit longer. So I switch my microphone off for a second, everybody catches up and I start again. But if you're sharing a document, sometimes that can take a wee minute for it to show on everybody's screens. So whenever I share a document, I ask people to put the tick up to let me know that they can see it before I get rid of the screen and carry on with looking through the document. Issues that you might come across, frequent issues with students reporting they're having problems with audio and microphones. They'll always tell you that their headsets aren't working, and we have found that that is not ever usually the case. The first port of call is check that they've done the audio setup. Even if they have, ask them to do it again. Sometimes things can just alter a little bit, and doing it again can just knock it all through and it works again fine. If that doesn't work, ask them to close the room and launch back into it. Don't close down their computer, but just close the classroom and click the launch button again to come back in. Then run the audio setup again and it might just work. Sometimes they might have to change the headsets and sometimes that does work. But we've talked about this across a lot of courses where it's being taught, and it does seem to be a common issue. We think there might be some kind of Blackboard problem. It could be a compatibility problem with the type of headsets that we have. It could be something else. We're looking into it at the moment. But that's what I would suggest you do if that happens. Something else to note is it is important at the end of a session. Sorry, I'll just pause for a second because Val's asked the question. Yeah, students can get in here on their home PCs. They might need to have up-to-date versions of Java and things like that, and it's not compatible with Google Chrome. It doesn't work really very well on that. The best browser to use for it is Firefox, so if they're ever having issues, suggest they use Firefox. But if they're off sick, technically they should just be off sick. They shouldn't really be trying to come in from home. If it's a weather issue, perhaps, you might want to allow them to do that. But generally speaking, if people can't get into college, you would expect them to be absent, and that's when you would record the session and they can access that later on. So yeah, at the end of a session, it's important that you ask your students to make sure they log out. Usually your learning centre or your college centre will need to know what type of technology you're using and the time slots you'll be using it in. So they'll want a copy of your timetable, and they will plan other things that need connectivity around what you're using. So they will be expecting your class to end, say, at 11:30 in Blackboard, and for that connectivity to be available again. So sometimes students can hang around in the classroom. They're maybe staying to do work and they don't realise that staying in the classroom uses connectivity. So it can be good to let your students know that whenever they're finished, they should log out. It also means if you're using the classroom with your name, all the students leave and you can stay in there and the new students will can arrive and you don't need to come out of the room. You can just change the pages. Please be aware though, if you're using the classroom with your name and having different classes come in and out of it, if you record the session, you're recording the full entire session. So you're recording the first group and the second group and the third group all together, and that recording will drop itself into the last session that came in. So it won't be available to everybody, and that can be a bit of a problem. To combat that, you can just close the room and come back into it fresh from another unit, and that will drop the recording into that particular unit instead of anywhere else. Okay, so as I say, I have got this all in a guide, and I'll email that out to those of you who've attended today, and those of you who I know were going to attend and might be watching the recording. It's also got a link to it to the UHI Mahara site, which has got loads of videos with tutorials for Blackboard. So if there's anything that I haven't covered or anything you want more detail on, you can click that link to have a look there. It's also got information on what to do if you've got any technical issues. Initially, these should be reported to the UHI help desk. If it's urgent, if you've got students who can't get in or things that aren't working or it's crashing all the time, phone them rather than emailing them, and they should be able to help you straight away. Murdo McMillan is the UHI expert on Blackboard, and he is good at responding quickly, but he is you do contact him through the help desk. So you'd set your help desk job up. If it's to do with Blackboard, they'll send it straight to him and he'll get straight onto it. He's very good. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to go through with you. Hopefully it's been quite helpful. If you've got any further questions, just give me a shout. Val, you're asking who's the best person for using Mahara. Well, there's not really much of a guide to it. The link I've put there will take you straight to the page for Blackboard videos. I think perhaps Murdo is probably the expert on that as well, but if you're not sure, send an email to the help desk and ask who's a contact for using Mahara or who might be able to give you some assistance there, and they'll pass it on to them. Fiona Grant might know as well because she tends to know who all the experts are. Okay, any more questions?
No.
Okay, that's brilliant then. Well, thank you for attending. I'll send that out by email just now, and if you want to watch the recording again, it will be available in this unit. When you come into the Blackboard Collaborate Classrooms, you'll see a tab at the bottom for recordings, and you should be able to find it there. You might need to search by date for that. Okay, so you guys can just leave the room now if you want. You do that just by closing it down with the red X, and that'll be you gone, and I'll stop the recording now.
Thanks, Ian.